Hi, everybody. It's Andrea here, Andrea Seabrook, and this is Stephen Velez. You should know this guy. He
Hi,
is
everybody.
he is a guy to know. So it's really good to have you all here. Thank you for coming. We are going to talk today about Wandavision, which is something Stephen should know. I never thought I would go on to you should go anywhere and say, "Oh, we're going to talk about pop culture." It's kind of Stephen why I wanted to have you on, because this man here on this side, right, learning to be a weather person. This man here is the one who, like, more than anyone in this universe, who helped me respect pop culture in the first place. It's true. And, because I came from a family that, kind of wasn't so into TV, and, amazing upbringing, right? Surrounded by books and, intellectual thought and, all these things. Also on the internet. I mean, in terms of internet culture, yeah, like I've always been steeped in that. But it wasn't until I met Stephen and some other amazing people in our sort of community of people who were talking about, the X-Files, and I don't know what we were talking about then. I'm like trying to remember it must have been X-Files years.
I think Star Wars also was an early connective, because that was something
Totally.
we were into, and I think there was a lot of connection over the wonderful world of Star Wars.
Yes, all of that stuff, and I think that it, like, they meshed it. Like, became to realize, largely again through you and our people, that like pop culture is a reflection of ourselves in a like very real and deep way. And I've been in news my whole life, and we think we're talking about ourselves all the time. Here are the important things that are happening today, and here's what it means, and all this stuff. Whereas, and it's like pop culture is actually a much better mirror in that sense that, you can tell so much truth in fiction. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think too the sort of, I think pop culture and the way it uses metaphor, I think certainly all the things that I grew up on, in addition to books and things like that, but like TV and comics and all those things, are always things that I saw in those mediums that, made me feel welcome and made me feel like validation of ways that I felt or things that I saw. And I think that's always, what's appealed to me about, particularly for me, comic books and science fiction and horror. I think all of those things are just constant reflections of, in particular, I think anxieties that the culture is experiencing, but also fantasies and ideals and aspirations.
Yes. Our morals as a culture. And this gets us so coming to the present. Here we are. I've been hanging around with all these crazy people, and if you want to know who's crazy in this world, just check out the chat below. We have Mr. Captain Trek, my entree into this world in the first place. Michael T, a guy who's doing comic books that are outside of the convention. We've got like Jitse Lemons, who's in Belgium making amazing art. You've got Professor Brainy Specs, who's like got it all up there in his brain, making incredible connections. You've got, Latino Slant in LA doing unbelievable, great, bringing people together to talk about the most important stuff. Speaking of which, Deadwood Watch Party tonight. Thank you, Stephen. We can talk about that later. Eli Huhu, who's like a astrophysicist in San Francisco. You've got like these amazing people coming together and talking about like who we are all the time, who we are. And that's when I started watching WandaVision. Now, I am not a person who has seen all of the Marvel, there was a really funny moment where I was hanging out with these people and we're talking about stuff, and they're like, keep referring to the MCU and the MCU. And I was like, what is the MCU? And people were like, how exactly did you get here? Like, how can you not know what that is? And
It's been really interesting. it's been really interesting to see the MCU, become something of its own, kind of its own beast, and I think
Right.
as distinct from Marvel Comics, and distinct from other kind of fandom, the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is very much its own kind of pathway that's distinct to some degree from the comics. And as a comics nerd, of course, I'm always like, well, that's not how it happened, and it's different than that. But I'm also not the kind of person who can't allow for other interpretations, so it makes for a nice parallel universe.
You will fit in well with this
Yeah.
crowd of people, Stephen. But yeah, so to me, it's like to do the kind of work I've done in the past, and then be sitting. I'm going to go on a live stream about the MCU. It's like it's kind of a turn for me. But I knew who to turn to, Stephen, when I wanted to talk about it, and that was Stephen Velez. So WandaVision, there is a bigger. So I haven't released my video yet, which has my big theory. But in general, I want to talk about women in WandaVision and the Marvel universe in general, and not in like a a grandstanding kind of way, but just like noticing the evolution of female heroines, if we can, or superheroes, in the MCU. But so that's what my video is about. But what we want to talk about today is this incredible piece of cultural history they have given us. I'm like, oh, who's this Scarlet Witch? Like, that was my I am not you, Stephen. So at the end of this last episode, I wasn't like, I was like, what? But for me, the first, everything up to now has been this incredibly beautiful and quite intellectual, historically accurate portrayal and cash through of ourselves through the American sitcom. And, so you've got, let's start with the first one. Like, the whole thing opens in black and white, in this Dick Van Dyke Show thing. What was your thought when you saw that?
Well, I remember Vision coming in and doing a pratfall over the Ottoman, which was Dick Van Dyke's big move. And I just was like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. But as that episode progressed, I think certainly the Dick Van Dyke Show was its opening. But for me, it really became a riff on Bewitched. And I think, Bewitched as sort of a prototypical sort of, sneaky feminist sitcom, about, someone who's, got this tension between two worlds of mortals and witches, but which I think, if we look a little deeper, can also be sort of a tension between, being a woman, being a mother, particularly in the 50s and the 60s, and kind of the expectations that were placed upon them. And so I think, and one, like, Elizabeth Olsen looks a lot like Elizabeth Montgomery.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
There are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, can we just make a Bewitched movie with her in it? Because,
right.
This is awesome. And Elizabeth Montgomery was awesome. And, it's great to see that, 60 years later almost, that Bewitched is still playing a crucial part in sort of driving this narrative. And I don't think they would have chosen it if there weren't, powerful statements about what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a mother, and sort of emerging in a culture that doesn't necessarily, and certainly didn't then, shine on those things in an equitable way.
Yeah. And not to get too deep into any one, I want to, when you watch, so it goes Dick Van Dyke. The second one is the second one Bewitched? As they progress, it's not.
And then they go
like
Brady Bunch, and
yes,
but even as they go into there's a Malcolm in the Middle one, and then sort of a modern family one, and I think that's really smart because they're tracing that evolution sort of externally, because that's how it looks. But I think underneath that, and to those of us who watch those shows, growing up in our whole lives, and who maybe have had, a little bit of critical help from our parents to kind of decode them a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it just makes it so much richer, like,
Oh,
and just such an interesting move to like take these two characters who don't, sort of ostensibly seem to have much connection to like, the glory of sitcoms and the heyday of sitcoms, and then place them in that as a way of, sort of explaining, Wanda's incredible conflict and
oh,
just all the things she's going. And, especially too, as a lot of it is about her, obviously reclaiming or trying to reclaim, her family, her parents, her
yes.
brother, but then Vision too, like, her lover. It's just beautiful, and it
Yes.
sets this sort of, because the other thing about a lot of these sitcoms, and I think for any of us who've watched them a lot, I love them, but I also have a hard time with them because, quite frankly, they do uphold, certain aspects of culture, particularly in terms of race and gender. So there's always that little bit of like, and like Honeymooners, I'm looking at you in particular, where it really, is cringeworthy at times. I mean, all those
Yeah.
folks were hilarious, but how many times does Ralph Cramden physically, threaten Alice,
Right.
whenever she, speaks her mind,
Right.
and so, I think that makes it all the more appropriate and meaningful to take those things and sort of reclaim them a little bit and then repurpose them as an
Yes.
expression of, you know, frustration with how people have been treated and
I,
seen.
you know, I'm not sure. Like, this is one thing I love about this progression is that I don't think they're saying, oh, this was wrong. I
No,
think they were saying, oh, it was, like these are the
right.
things that shape this. And I love that about how they've used it. So especially for those of us who were born in the, early to mid 70s. So like squarely Gen Xers, we grew up first watching like a lot of those things on reruns.
Oh
And
my
then it
gosh.
becomes our present when we were kids, and then it became, like, so it's really so much about like what shaped us and our cultural
Yeah.
expectations. And I love how I was reading into it last night, and the producers of the show took everyone, like cast and crew of the show WandaVision, and sent and like created a sitcom boot camp, and like they not only that, I mean, they played like examples and like teased out for them the cultural theory behind looking at these sitcoms these ways. And this is another great thing, which I've gone back and watched some of this now, and this is in the video that I'm producing. But they gave everybody a book of what do you call it, like Emily Post, Miss Manners, kind of like how you act as a woman, like what it means to be a wife, dress up nicely and greet him at the front door, like that kind of thing. They gave them a whole bunch of those from each decade that the shows are from, so that and the actors in a couple of things that I saw, especially Catherine Hahn, who, oh my God,
So good.
Oh my
And
God.
I already loved her to death.
Yeah, me too. And Elizabeth Olsen, they talk about how they had to like change how they move and like how they sit. And for an actor, that's huge. You know what I
There's a
mean?
lot
And
of like,
because of the cultural expectations that are expect you couldn't go back and do what they did without really studying that stuff.
right. Well, and it's as you bring that up too, one of the first images that comes to my mind is Barbara Billingsley in Leave It to Beaver, who, she literally would sort of flow into a room and sweep back and forth. And she was always, perfectly, put together to the nines, and the house was
Yes.
pristine. And but I think too, like, and I think Leave It to Beaver is a great place to see it as well. It couldn't look more patriarchal, but then at the same time, June constantly held Ward accountable for his actions, particularly as far as raising the children goes. She would pull him aside and say, "Ward, you're wrong," and Ward would go apologize to the kids, which I can only imagine, based on what I've heard about my parents, upbringing, was a radical notion for an adult to
Totally.
apologize to a child, much less for a father to a man to really listen to his partner, to his wife, to a woman, and take into consideration her intellectual contributions to a family, that it wasn't just, housekeeping. Not that housekeeping is anything to be ashamed of or anything like that, but
Yeah.
just that as far as we see the Rockwellian, underpinnings of like the 1950s, and so I think WandaVision really gets that, and they really
Yeah.
understand how to make it look how it looked while teasing out some of the things that were always there, but being able to be a little bit more explicit about them.
Totally, totally, totally. Let me just give an all hail to a few people in the chat. Thank you all for coming, not Ryan Johnson. I believe in when I was talking about these people who are like so important to me right now. These people who I've never met in person, who I've been hanging out with, sort of almost 24/7 on the tubes. I can't believe I didn't mention at first sort of what I call the nucleus of this particular group that I've been hanging out with, which is Bird of Prey 5, Hail Kuroga, and I will say that one last time because I have moved on. Though I am a citizen of Kuroga, I'm establishing the new important center of culture, Trashcanistan. We are the wastebasket of the Midwest. And thank you. And but Bird of Prey 5, thank you, all hail. And Aberjam in the UK, always saying cool stuff. Like these peeps, Dave G said, like we've got the most incredible people here. All right, and including our very own Marvin the Martian, Thomas Potts. We love having you here. Don't go away. And John DeMarco. I mean, come on, these are my peeps. But so here's one of the things that I think is also so cool. I want to make sure I get this out in the beginning. Like, I feel I started making this video about women in WandaVision, and I started to say to myself, no one's talking about that. Like, I have all these friends who are like, and there's a magical pineapple. You know who you are, LDG. And like, what is this? And they're like, oh, and is it white vision or is it spectral? Blah blah blah. All these, the things that are not me about this. And then I was like, you know what though? It would feel kind of gotcha to be like, you're not talking about the women. When in fact, the cool thing is we're treating like everybody, all of the most geekiest guys, like super guy culture guys, they're not talking about, oh, the women in the MCU, because they're just treating them as if they were great characters in another MCU thing. It's like almost like we've gotten there. We don't need these women to just be women. Now we have a woman character here, right? Like, we don't need to reduce them to that, because they're just as respected as any male superhero by all these guys, because they're complex. They do really bad, wrong things. Like, so much of this, I think there's all this backstory in especially the WandaVision relationship about what happens when you really, really fuck something up. Like, and you might kill someone, or a lot of people in one, you might, and then how do you deal with those feelings later? Like, how do you deal with that? I mean, they're complex, amazing characters. And I think the culture is treating them not like it's a woman's story, because it's not.
Right. Well, and I think, you make a great point, and especially as we sit here, at the beginning of Women's History Month, is that, it is important to continue to, shine a light on those things, because we are striving, hopefully, most of us, to, get to somewhere where we all have equal voice, but I was saying to my students this morning as we were discussing it that, at some point, it will be nice when we can just talk about each other without necessarily having to distinguish, everyone. And that speaks to, the distance we've come. And I think in the case of Wanda, one of the things that Marvel, I think, did really well was that a lot of its characters started out as villains. Wanda, Scarlet Witch, certainly, Black Widow, also Hawkeye, and Marvel gave them an opportunity. The writers at Marvel, very intentionally positioned them as villains and then allowed them in with the heroes. And so it wasn't about defeat. It wasn't about like, we're going to crush you down, so that you will be no more. It was about, can we find common ground? Can we see what is making you a villain? Perhaps your villainy is not rooted in evil, but perhaps it's rooted in circumstance, or perhaps your heroism is not quite as rooted in like black and white either, and I think that's one of the beautiful things that they've done. And I think Scarlet Witch is a great, ambassador for that, because she's also arguably the most powerful character in the Marvel universe. And if she's not, the other people we're talking about are like Jean Grey, and other female, characters who have a lot of power, but also who, face a lot of conflict while wielding it. And so to see Wanda sort of go from, a villain, but one that the show and the movies make clear was not entirely her fault, circumstance again, and those things impacted it, but that there's room to find out who we are, that it's not about a punitive world. It's not about, you're evil, you're going to jail,
It's not cancel culture.
I love
like, there's
that.
redemption.
Right. And I think that too is, the more I watch a lot of these movies and read comics, and, I'm almost 50 years old, I so, like, in the end of Black Panther, I so wanted him and Killmonger to sort of work it out, because Killmonger wasn't really wrong. He just sort of took
that guy had been left.
Right. And I want more to see, people coming together. Like, I like.
You're such a hippie.
Comment, yeah, I know. I want everyone to just love each other, man. And I think also then you throw in with Wanda, Wandavision, which I love, that has barely been mentioned, but like, he's a robot, right? Her lover is a robot. So we're 2 steps away from like bestiality, and we're not even talking about that, which is great, because whatever he is, he's a sentient organism of some kind. And that, that love and partnership have to do
so
with
much
connection.
Into there, Stephen. So much.
No, I love it. And
oh my God,
and that's always something that's drawn me to them, because there's that whole Blade Runner, sort of Isaac Asimov, iRobot
AI
kind of like situation coming in, and I find that fascinating, because in episode 8, as they're taking him apart and into pieces, it's like, well, does Vision have agency? Is he a weapon, as they say, or is he, for lack of, just for general purposes, is he a person? And I think his connection with Wanda, I think, sort of demonstrates his humanity.
Yeah. So let me, on that point. I didn't know, like I've been saying, a lot of the backstory here, but I was thinking when we got to this last episode, where we find out that Catherine Hahn is Agatha, and then we get this amazing. What's that?
I was just saying, I was like, I kind of knew she was Agatha Harkness.
Of course you did. Oh my God! Did you happen to see like some of the remixes of the song? It was Agatha all along, because that song is banging.
It is a great song, and I'm looking up Agatha Harkness remixes as soon as we're done.
Oh my God, there's a trap version. There's a trap version that's just boom, so good.
Well, and I have to say too, real quick, that the second that started, they're really pulling in the Addams Family, which I think is another, great. Well, just I think that whole song had a cadence like the Addams Family theme. And to me, the Addams Family were always about, be proud of who you are, let your freak flag fly, and still be a loving and open and accepting person. And that's why they always appeal to me. So it was really fun that in this sort of homogenized, nuclear family sitcom, doses we were getting, that they took a little time to draw in the wacky Addams Family and their brand of punk weirdo-ness.
I know you have to go. You only have a few minutes, but I wanted to say that, like, I think I was thinking at that time when she was revealed to be Agatha, that like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if someone had said, "Oh, and now we're going to have witches in the MCU," right, it wouldn't have been respected as the kind of power that like a superhero has. But having established now, having seen beautifully this like evolution of women's power, right? It's like no big, oh, right, witches, that makes total sense. And then so now you get this like whole huge backstory in one like 30-minute episode, right? Of like bringing it all up to date, reintroducing those women. And so when Catherine Hahn or Agatha at the end of it says, "You are the Scarlet Witch," it's like totally like boom, you know, there's, you realize that's huge power. It's not like, "And your little doggy too." You know, it's not that witch. We're not talking about that, you know, we're talking
about like, you know, connected to the earth kind of power. Like,
exactly.
And I think, if I may, very quickly, like, you make a great point, because even though her name is the Scarlet Witch, I don't think in the Marvel comic book universe that she was really treated as a witch very much as sort of a vague amalgamation of, you know, her hex powers, which, you know, create disruptions. They're always sort of vaguely defined, and it hasn't been until more recently that I think her witchness has been brought out more. And I think with that also comes, you know, persecution, that the persecution of people for supposedly being witches is an important part. Exactly. And that's an important part of being, you know, a witch, or of talking about witches and women, because again,
oppression,
that persecution
of the power
was like, oh, you know, you do stuff that like women do, but as a man, I'm insecure about it. So why don't I burn you at the stake? That'll solve the problem.
Right. I mean, the whole sort of trope or meme of witches in the first place is about oppressing women's power. Right. I mean, but what I love is that, I don't know, once you realize this and you realize like, oh, so the MCU is like bringing this in full on in a respectful way, along with these like, it just like look back for a second. And here's what I say at the beginning of the video is like, this whole entire show, WandaVision, is about women and power and women's relationships with each other, and how they identify themselves, how they, you know, it's so obvious. Like Agatha has spent, at least in this WandaVision thing, her whole life, like studying, inheriting some power, like, you know, her whole obsession about this power. And Wanda has spent her whole life kind of repressing and refusing to understand this power. And they come towards each other. And there's this great moment where Agatha says, like, you know, studying all my life to do this, like one little thing. And you can just like control the whole, like, you've got people having complex interactions out at the edge of town.
On autopilot. I love that. Right. I love that. And as if I can say, and I do have to go in 1 second, but you know, that final point you made about sort of the relationship between women, you know, Agatha is, even though she's sort of positioned as the villain, there's nothing sort of villainous about it, and that they're just seeking to kind of understand and come together. And I really, really like that sort of conflict, as opposed to the, you know, sort of, you know, it's like Doctor Strange. I love that movie, but in the end, they're basically just punching each other with magic bolts, you know. And it's like, so you have this metaphysical, like trippy, like crazy thing, and it's still like a punch out. And it's like, how male can you be, you know? And so I really like the way that Scarlet Witch is, you know, and that WandaVision is just kind of is playing with that in a way that's very satisfying, and you know, very, you know, goes a lot deeper, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I will let you go, but like Agatha is not a villain. Right. Agatha is she, and they are perfectly positioned right now to recognize each other's weaknesses, to have horrible bitchy cat fights, to grind against each other. This is about women's relationships. This is how we do it. It's like, it's real, you know? but she is not a villain. They both have the opportunity for redemption, and I think we will see at least hints of that.
I hope so. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I always love talking about this stuff. Likewise, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.
You have a button, right?
Yep, I'm going to press the X button like the X-Men where Scarlet Witch first showed up. Bye.
Okay, so that is one of my oldest, dearest friends, Stephen Velez. He does have a channel out there, which I believe I have a link to that I can put in chat. Yep, there it is. Stephen is brilliant, and he belongs here with all of us. He's also a early educator. He's a preschool teacher, and most of the stuff that you'll find on his channel right now will be, I think, him reading books. I think kids' books. But as you can see, he's like incredibly astute. And I don't know. I think Steve and I are going to talk about like having a regular conversation about all things. But he's like one of those guys that he should be out there saying these opinions. So it's good to have him there. So let me real quick, because I feel like I've been ignoring the chat. I knew he had to go teach in a second. So let's see. We've got, I have not read any. Oh, Orville is here. Orville Nation is here. It's so good to see you. And thank you. If you guys haven't been watching Orville, he also, he's another channel, and his work is like really culturally astute. I love it when we can get into like the real big issues with these things, because that's what I love about the our pop culture obsession here. Make sure you check out Orville Nation. And let's see. John DeMarco is saying there were magical fistfights in Doctor Strange, but the ultimate victory came from Strange outsmarting, Dormammu. See, this is where it's like, what are you doing here, Seabrook? Like, you can't say Dormammu, or I don't even know what that is. But you guys, we're talking about the real stuff here, which I love. Another thing I wanted to make clear is that, while I do politics, I have friends and people from all over the political spectrum. And in my life, I have worked really hard to have the kinds of relationships that I think you guys are also forming and graciously letting me into here, where your friends can have really different ideas about some things, but we can still talk about this stuff. And with the video that I'm doing, I'm trying really hard to figure out how to say, look at all this incredible stuff about the evolution of women in society and their place and their power, without sounding like I'm a women's studies professor, right? Because I know that some people will say, oh, you're gonna talk about women at all? Well, then you must be some, crazy ass liberal. And that's not what I'm doing. There's so much incredible stuff going on here, and it's just interesting to dig into it and point it out. Let's see. And I wanted to say, Thomas Potts, I did not mean Marvin the Martian when I said that you were our own personal Marvin the Martian. I meant, and I know you know what I meant, Marvin the Paranoid Android, of course, from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I want everyone to notice now that Thomas Potts is a critical part of our community, and he plays that role for us. And maybe we should have a whole stream sometime just about how important Thomas Potts is to in our community, because he plays, it's if Bird is, I don't know, I don't want to call Bird Zaphod Beeblebrox, because you don't have three heads and you are not totally insane. Two heads, and you're not totally insane. But you get my point. Marvin the Paranoid Martian is incredibly critical to Hitchhiker's Guide, and has a similar orientation, I think, sometimes towards life that our dear friend Thomas Potts has. Let's see. Who else? Let's see here. Prediction from Aberjam UK. Agatha is being set up as the big bad for Doctor Strange 2, but during that movie, she will slowly turn bad and will slowly turn good, and we'll find out that Ralph / Mephisto is the real enemy. Interesting. Thank you, Mr. Aberjam UK. I'm sort of thinking about Agatha in the way that I was just talking to Stephen about, that like women, this is like, and this is the point of the video, women's relationships develop so differently with each other than they are often portrayed and have been portrayed in movies. Like we went through a long period where it was like, oh, now we will have a woman superhero, bonk, and and she's basically just a superhero that has like a female avatar on it. And we've been talking among all of our friends these days about how that can be done really badly. Like you don't want to take like it could be really bad if Superman goes, and if like the people making Superman go and they're like, oh, now we will have a black Superman, and so everything that Superman does will now be a black thing. You know what I mean? Instead of honoring humanity of any person before color or racial identification, or these things. Like that's where we go wrong, is this like false culture and feeding people an idea of what someone has to be, whether that's negative racism or positive racism, because of their cultural identification. I think that's what I think is so impressive about WandaVision, is that these two women are they're just people, but it also honors the fact that women develop identity and relationship really, really differently than men, and they're doing it right there in front of us. Women, witches be bitches. Like we will grind against each other. We will, in this case, we will threaten your kids. We will, like all the things that are happening there, they're not signifiers that she's a bad guy. They're signifiers that she acts like and identifies with the world and identifies herself in a way that women do. And I just think it's like so fascinating to watch that. I'd love to hear if anybody thinks differently. I'd love to hear all of the theories. And let's see. Aberjam identifies as Zem the mattress, or matron. Were you trying to say, or do you identify as a mattress? That would be a little bit sad. Let's see. Let me go back and see if anybody who has anything to say. I'm sort of feeling like getting to the end of this part of what I'm doing. So if anybody wants to chat about especially any of these ideas, if you're thinking they make some sense, if there's something I haven't explored, let me know now, because I'm gonna wrap up this video that I'm doing, and I really want to get everything right. Let's see, what else? Anybody? Let's see. Aberjam also said much earlier, women in the MCU were great till the end of Endgame, when Disney made it clear where they want to take the lore going forward. I don't know exactly what you're referring to. Let's see. So maybe you want to tell me, oh, and I have this thing I can do, right? I can go, look, John DeMarco says greetings. Wait, see, I'm still learning to be a weatherman here. Andrea Seabrook, you're leading the local pack. That's for damn sure. And I make no apology. Captain Trek pointing out that I'm up to 10 keys to my hotel room. And, yeah, you know what? Between telling you that, I had to run out to my car to get my microphone, which I didn't have time to set up. I erased another key. I did. And I don't want to take this in a boring direction, but the reason why, and I will not take the incredibly strong rare earth magnet off the back of my phone. The reason it's there is because I use I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Night Eyes. They're like these steel, I think they're stainless steel, like machined, they look like giant ball bearings that you can affix to your dashboard or wherever else. And then this, which is a rare earth magnet, meaning really, really strong and small, but it's also concave. So what I can do is take my phone and slap it onto that steel ball, which I have affixed to my dashboard. And it's like fixed there, but also because it's concave, completely swivelable, and then when I leave the car, I just grab it and leave. And it is like the best thing ever. These guys who designed it in the first place had a Kickstarter years ago. I mean, I've had one of these for maybe 4 years or something like that. And I bought it off Kickstarter. And since then, you will find them at all of the truck stops. You will find them like any place where there are professionals driving. You will find these things sold. So not about WandaVision or the culture, but that is why I will put this thing on the back of my phone. And that is why I keep erasing hotel key cards. And they keep giving me these little things. Oh, well, small price to pay. Let's see. Thank you, Yosef. I was just like, oh, I'll feature something from Yosef. Oh, no, I won't feature that from Yosef. Jedi Bill, thank you for coming here. Another of the Loco Pack, as Paulie put it, Latino slant. The guy who keeps us sane when we can't sleep. That's actually not right. The guy who we join with insanely when we can't sleep. Let's see. Anybody? Oh, please, anybody, feel free to post in the chat where your thingies are, your channels, and where to find you on Twitter. I am not deft enough at this yet to be able to like do all of the things at once. Also, you'll see like I'm a little self-conscious about the fact that people see me only with these glasses on because they're my reading glasses. I don't expect to like my whole identity to be me with reading glasses. If they were the glasses I wear all day, every day, then I would choose them differently than big, giant orange things. But like, I just wear them to be able to read in front of me. It's not like my whole identity here. But then when you come on the tubes and people only ever see me within like 1 foot of my face, then I have to wear my reading glasses. So what that means is that I'm now like putting them up and down. And when I have them up like this so that you can see what I actually look like and not just like an avatar with orange reading glasses, then I can't read the chat. I can't even see what words are on the buttons. So I don't know what I'm going to do. This is obviously a very big and important problem. Going back to the glasses. Dave G. Sound says, Thomas, if you can watch the series, it doesn't go through the whole works in the book, but it is great. I will derive from that Thomas Potts has not read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. My friend, if you send me, DM me, of course, your address, I will send it to you. I will have it drop shipped because that's what kept me sane through my childhood. That was where actually probably Hitchhikers was my real entree into pop culture, because the household that I grew up in did not have a lot of respect for pop culture at all. I mean, it was very like bookish and computers. Yes, my dad's a computer science professor and was in the 80s. So I was on bulletin boards and playing Zork, and I was a real kind of nerd that was like, yay, we got 1,200 mods, but so that's always been a thing. But I was not allowed to watch TV almost at all. So Hitchhikers was like how I first identified with these things. And like, by the time I met Stephen and my sort of closest friends, Stephen Bellis, who you just saw in here, they were the ones who were like, what? You haven't seen this? You don't know anything about this, and like, and so that's where I came to like really love pop culture and see all the things that it can do that are kind of thrown aside as not real culture. We've evolved so much from that, but like, when you're in high school or whatever, and you're talking about Doctor Who, not a whole lot of respect among the football cheerleader gang for that. Luckily, though, I was in the band, the cool kids. Not only I was so cool that I was a chubby tuba player girl. That's how cool I was. You know it. You love it. Let's see. Anything else that I should put in the chat or anything? Oh, yeah. Michael T. makes a really good point. Race or gender does not equal personality. It can inform it, but it's not the entirety of the person. That's what a lot of current writers don't get. Absolutely. Absolutely. For instance, when I was covering, there's a massive change in this country over my early political career from absolute no gay marriage to it being like kind of who cares, right? it exists, who cares? And what's interesting to me is like at the beginning of that, I knew a lot, and I still know in some ways, a lot of people whose sexual orientation may not be straight, but who also are not fighting for gay marriage. And the whole idea that like if you're gay, you have to be for gay marriage, that makes an assumption that is not fair. That is wrong. And that's kind of like the worst part of what you all call the SJW thing, or like the cancel culture thing, is like the expression that you must, of orthodoxy, like it's liberal orthodoxy, like you must think this and say these particular things, instead of actually having like free thought be the point. Let's see. I saw Geeks enjoying Nerdrotica. Hello, Senor LDG. My theory is that at the end of WandaVision, I will lose what's left of my mind and go to the cuckoo house. I think this may be the one thing that you are dead right on. Zinger. No. You know what's interesting about your theories, LDG, and I've been, fucking with you about the magical pineapple, but I think you know so much about this that it's almost too much in a way. Like you talking about like the scene cuts and the production and like things they left out, that's really deep and led you down some rabbit holes. But the only reason you can go down those rabbit holes is because you know so much. So in a way, the love is real love. It's not just, fucking with you. And I actually think that I predict that we will find that you have been right about more than people are giving you credit for in these last things. Because remember, it's always the penultimate episode, the next to last episode, that is going to kind of fuck with you the most. Like we will find out new things in this last episode. I'm sure it won't. I know that there's a lot to do in this last episode, like in terms of like tying up this show, setting up the movies, like making sure that WandaVision and Agatha and all that fit correctly into the MCU for the next, bunch of narrative that is to come. But I think just like at the end of the 7th version, it said it was Agatha all along. And then we find out in the 8th episode that actually not just Agatha all along. I think we'll have some more twists, and I think LDG you will be vindicated on some of them anyway. So hold that, watch that space, watch this space. Let's see, we've got Jedi Bill giving a link to, is that Insomniac Soup? I assume so. Here it is. Let's see. What else do we have here? Captain Trek putting in Michael T. I don't know what any of these links are, and it's too hard for me to do this because I don't know what I'm doing. I think Captain Trek is putting some things in here that we all need to go see. Orville Nation's channel. We got Michael T. Thank you, Captain, for doing this. For being my wrench without me, A, knowing I needed one, B, asking anyone to be one, etc. Let's see. Yitze, the most wonderful Yitze, has put in a link. I don't know what it is too, but warning, he prefaces it with sexy stuff in here too. It's our YouTube channels. Thank you. As I was asking her to do, because I'm gonna shut this down in just a second. Stephen Velez, go follow him. He's up there. He wrote his thing about 5 minutes ago, says, thanks for having me on, Andy. You're the best. Love talking pop culture as a reflection of social culture. Thank you, Stephen Velez. We're going to do more of that. You guys are going to love this thing. And I am going to go ahead and close this out. Thank you all for coming and watching. It is most humbling. I mean it when I say, you guys, you're keeping me sane here. I think I have deep gratitude for the relationships that I find here, and that we are building, and you have built and allow me to come into. I'm going to stop because Thank you all so much. Hit like and subscribe or whatever the thing is you're supposed to say. Blah, blah. Bye, guys. Yes, you're right. I did that again. I exited the studio instead of ending the live stream. Because I'm such a professional at this stuff. Good to see you guys. Mwah.